There are some chairs down here if anybody needs a chair. All right. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming. We are so grateful to see this support. It's very important to us. My name is Sharon Day. I'm part of Seward Legacy Preservation. We're a group of concerned citizens whose goal is to keep the legacy of William Henry Seward intact. First, by stopping the sale of the painting by Thomas Cole, and second, by having it returned to its rightful place, Mr. Seward's home, where it's been for over 150 years. The purpose of this meeting is to clarify what we're doing, why we're doing it, and to ask for your support and to let you know how you can help. There will be 2 brief presentations, and then we'll take questions from the floor. First, you'll hear from family history from Ray Messenger, who is the great-great-grandson of William Henry Seward. And then Karen Bovey will give us some information on why the painting was made and how it was given to Mr. Seward. And then again, we'll open the floor for questions from you. After the meeting, we have a lot of information to give you. There are some handouts. There are ways we can tell you to continue to support this cause. And I'll tell you more about that later. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Ray Messenger and then Karen Bovey. Ray.
William H. Seward III and Fred Emerson were longtime friends. Will was a lawyer and a banker. Fred was an industrialist and a philanthropist. One thing most people seem to remember about them as lifelong friends was they liked golf. A lot of good things happened on golf courses. Will Seward III's last will and testament stated the following: I give, devise, and bequeath to the Fred L. Emerson Foundation, Incorporated, my homestead premises in the city of Auburn, New York, to be maintained by it as a memorial for my grandfather, William H. Seward, former governor of New York State, United States Senator, and U.S. Secretary of State during the Civil War, and for my father, Brigadier General William H. Seward, together with all articles of furniture, furnishings, portraits, paintings, books, and souvenirs thereon. Despite their being lifelong friends, Will Seward was 12 years older than Fred Emerson. I think when they began to think about this deal, they thought probably that Will would die first. Unfortunately, for anybody's thinking, Fred Emerson died 3 years before Will Seward. So it probably came as a surprise to his son, Bill Emerson, who had taken over the Emerson Foundation by then. He wrote to a friend, a rather interesting job has fallen to my lot recently. Mr. William H. Seward, the grandson of Lincoln's Secretary of State and the son of General Seward, died last month. In his will, he left his home to the Fred L. Emerson Foundation, of which I am now president. The term stated that the home was to be continued as a memorial to his grandfather and his father. Just what we're going to do with it, frankly, I don't know. It will require considerable thought before anything gets done. However, the house is filled with relics, and by relics I mean everything from articles of furniture down to souvenirs. Most of the items were presented to the Secretary of State during his period in office, or afterwards trip around the world. It is a fascinating collection, but the real beauty of the Seward home consists in their warm-hearted hospitality and the manner of their living. It is my mind to try to recreate some of this for the future. How interesting it would be and how educational for future generations to be able to step off the main street of Auburn into an atmosphere existing just after the Civil War. Can we turn the clock back? The more I think of it, the more I think it would be lots of fun to try. We have all the material things to do it with. It's the spirit only that will make it possible. In 1955, the house finally opened as a museum. It took 4 years to sort down the collection that had been accumulated. And I would also note, the job still isn't done. Last 2 winters ago, my wife and I spent the winter transcribing 70 letters from the general to his wife during the Civil War. Each year, the Emerson Foundation repaired, maintained, and improved, and they succeeded in bringing about Bill Emerson's vision for the future. Today, it is one of the finest house museums in the United States, especially with its 4 generations intact of family belongings and drawing over 13,000 visitors a year. It was managed by the Foundation Historical Association, set up by the Emerson Foundation. In 2006, Governor Pataki visited, and he arranged for a $250,000 grant from the Empire State Development Corporation to repair the carriage house and stable roofs at the grounds of the house. It turned out the FHA could not pick up the money. They were not a duly authorized museum in New York State. The Emerson Foundation had to transfer the Seward collection to a museum which was properly chartered under New York State Regents. And they got a original charter on January 8th, 2008. At that time, the Seward House Museum came into being, and the Foundation Historical Association ended. At the same time, the coal painting Portage Falls on the Genesee, estimates were being batted around anywhere from 10 to 20 million as its value. September of 2008, in September, the Emerson Foundation petitioned the Cuyahoga County Surrogates Court to keep possession of the coal painting and not transfer it into our Seward House Museum Board. This petition was granted with a proviso that, quote, the painting will not be transferred to any person or other entity other than Seward House Museum without first obtaining leave of the court, end of quote. The painting continued to hang in the Seward House Museum on loan from the Emerson Foundation. Early in the morning of February 21 this year, the coal painting was removed from the museum by the Emerson Foundation, transported to an undisclosed location. A letter received by mail that day was sent to a large number of people, telling them the painting would be sold and the proceeds divided in an undisclosed fashion between the Seward House Foundation and the Emerson Foundation. On February 27th, the descendants of William Henry Seward retained legal counsel to prevent the sale of the coal painting and seek its return to the Seward House Museum. Apart from its value of anywhere now from, I think, 15 to 18 million have been the estimates. Apart from that value, Karen Bowe will now tell you why it is. Its intrinsic value is more important.
before I start, I would like to point out the fact that Betty Lewis is here, who kept this house together for 50 years and did And this is the piece de resistance. This is why we're here. And I was hoping there would be a big, on the wall here, a projection of that gorgeous painting. So it's not, but imagine it in your mind, and most of you imagine have seen it. The story of how the coal painting, Portage Falls on the Genesee River, came into the ownership of the Seward family in 1841, and remained so for will be 172 years this summer. Begins with the story of two young men, Samuel Bulky Ruggles and William Henry Seward. They were both born at the turn of the 19th century, both brilliant. Ruggles was a Yale graduate at the age of 14 and a half. Seward went to Union College as a sophomore at 15, and Phi Beta Kappa when he graduated. Both were filled with ambition to play a part in developing their young country through internal improvements and through economic expansion. Ruggles was elected to the New York State Assembly in 1837. Much to Seward's satisfaction, he sent him a congratulatory letter. And Seward himself was elected governor the following year in the Whig sweep of 1838. This followed upon a great recession and panic of 1837, and the work on the Erie Canal had actually been halted at that time. But when Seward came in, he was very enthusiastic about extending access to the Erie Canal throughout the whole state. He was very impressed with a report that Samuel Ruggles made in 1838 on the prospects of developing the canal, expanding the canal, and the two of them worked together throughout Seward's governorship to do just that. The idea was to extend access to the canal throughout the whole state by building canal systems from all our major rivers. This opened up the entire state to economic expansion as well as the Midwest and the West. And you may know that it was George Washington's idea, first of all, to conduct canal system throughout to open up the West. And then Thomas Jefferson tried to do it, and he couldn't do it. But Seward and Ruggles continued that expansion and did it successfully. Not without some problems, however. One of them was monetary. Of course, if you think of Washington today, just think of New York State at that time, fighting over the cost of expanding that Erie Canal throughout the state. And other problems occurred on the way. Ruggles had been elected canal commissioner in 1841. Problems occurring on the way included, and this is related by Seward's son Frederick Seward, who finished actually. Seward started his autobiography, and Frederick finished it by using papers and letters of his father. And this is what Frederick said. Quote, "The engineering on some points on the line of the Genesee Valley Canal in 1839 was daring and difficult." And if you remember the picture, remember we see this huge cliff, and see the river, the Genesee, and then you see falls. So how's the canal going to get through there? Frederick continues, "It was initially, quote, proposed to hang the canal 600 feet above the gorge below." Imagine that. But the rock proved too soft, and it was decided first to tunnel through the cliff and make an open cutting through it. End of the quote. In looking at the site, Ruggles reflected, this magnificent scenery would soon be spoiled by an equally magnificent piece of engineering. And the thought occurred to him, according to Fred Seward, that the former, the scenery, might be preserved in a painting which would be a memento of both. So, Mr. Ruggles sent for Thomas Cole. He was a prominent landscape artist of the group we now know as the Hudson River School, and Ruggles commissioned the painting. The subject was to Cole's liking, And he completed it in 1839. If you've been close to it, you've seen the date written on the bottom, 1839. Doesn't get to Seward for a couple years. We know, oh, well, this painting, by the way, cost Ruggles $200. That's what his biographer said, and it's validated in the Ruggles papers, which are at the New York Public Library. We know it as Portage Falls on the Genesee. It embodies the style of Claude Lorraine. He was a 17th century French artist who transformed landscape painting into a respectable genre. Until then, it had been disdained. Just paint a landscape, what was the point? But like Lorraine and his French followers, and his other followers, not French, Constable and Turner, Cole's work emphasizes the sublime in nature, presents America as the new Eden, unspoiled wilderness, filled with majesty and fear. Cole was actually sometimes called our American Claude. After a lukewarm reception at the American Academy of Design, where the painting was exhibited from May until July of 1841, Ruggles, quote, presented it to Seward as an illustration of the great work proceeding under Seward's auspices. It has hung, continued Frederick Seward, for many years in his drawing room in Auburn, reaching nearly from floor to ceiling. In his July 24, 1841 letter to Seward, Ruggles wrote, "My dear Governor, our American Claude, Tom Cole, at my instigation, has painted in his peculiar autumn style a picture of the great gorge of the Genesee at Portage, upon the edge of which we are obliged to hang one of the most interesting sections of our canal. As a specimen of the physical difficulties which Governor Seward and his followers are compelled to encounter in extending the benefits of cheap and easy intercourse into the sequestered parts of our state, the picture may not be devoid of interest. If in your good judgment it possesses sufficient merit in that or any respect, I beg the favor of your committing it to hang in your executive chamber." And a few days later, Ruggles sent Seward another letter. "My dear Governor, I rejoice to learn from Blatchford," who was one of Seward's colleagues, "to learn from Blatchford that Cole's autumn tints have found favor at headquarters." Seward and Ruggles, and this continues the rich background of this painting. These two men maintained a rich and lifelong friendship. Ruggles praised Seward's 1848 speech on upholding the Union of the United States against the threatened secession of the South. And he wrote to Seward, he said, "Your words deserve to be printed in letters of fire and hung on every hilltop south of the Potomac." And he lauded Seward's bravery in his 1850 higher law speech, which you might remember. Seward said there was a higher law than the Constitution, which permitted slavery. The two men collaborated on developing the Transcontinental Railroad, the telegraph service, the Atlantic Cable, and the Croton Aqueduct, which brings water to New York City even today. In 1867, Seward sent Ruggles to Paris to the International Monetary Conference. Ruggles was considered one of the few United States experts in finance and economics. The news of Seward's death in 1872 hit Ruggles so hard he suffered a stroke a few days later. He would recover, he lived a few more years. The story behind the painting reflects the history of the development of New York State and its role in the development of the West through the expanded Erie Canal system. It also reflects the achievements of two prominent statesmen of New York and the United States, Seward and Ruggles. The historical value of the Cole painting has as much significance as any artistic merit assigned to it today. As much historic significance as any artistic merit assigned to it today. It has been in the Seward family since 1841 and deserves to remain there as part of the Seward House Museum in Auburn, New York. Thank you.
Pardon me, just 1 minute. I'm going to make this a little easier for us. Take questions. All right. We're now open for questions from the floor. Please speak loudly because it's important for everybody to hear the questions as well as the answers. And Ray and Karen can answer just about anything you want. And then after this, I'll give you some information about how you can help and what you can do to support this cause. So just raise your hand if you have a question, or stand, and we'll get on it. Yes?
Have we employed any legal counsel?
Yes, legal counsel has been obtained. Ray, do you want to talk to that?
You retained Boyle and Anderson, representatives in the court.
Okay. Legal counsel is Boyle and Anderson. And actually, I can tell you the first court date is going to be May 7th at 10 a.m. in the Surrogates Court. And it's going to be in the courtroom in the old post office. So if you'd like to come and just sit and witness things unfold, you're welcome to. Yes, sir.
I think it would help us a little bit if you gave us some idea what your plans are, how we could help, and then maybe we could direct our questions.
All right, that's a good idea. I will get right on that. Well, one thing you can do right away is to write letters to your local newspapers. Put this on your Facebook. Let everybody know about it. You can write a letter to Eric T. Schneiderman, Attorney General. We will be giving you his address. You can write to Christopher Wiles, Assistant Attorney General. You can write to the Charities Division, I believe that is Charities Bureau, which actually charters museums in this state, and express your concerns to them. You can donate, as you can imagine. The legal fees and everything it takes to get something like this going is quite costly. Along those lines, we've got a special tribute coming up fairly shortly, May 16th. Does anybody know what date that is? It is Seward's birthday, his 212th. We're going to have a fundraiser at Springside Inn. We're going to have music, lots of fun food, and a silent auction. And we would love to see all of you there. It would just be great. But please let everybody know on your Facebook what's going on and to keep these letters going. And I'm also pleased to tell you that a young man is here tonight over in this corner named Alex Walsh. And he is from Senator DeFrancisco's office, and he is taping this for the senator. Thank you very much, Alex, and the senator. Did that answer some of your questions?
Yeah, what's the legal precedent for the sale of this painting anyway? How did this come about?
Well, that's kind of a legal issue that I'm not quite equipped to. Can you talk about it anymore, Ray?
One of the reasons we have lawyers is to sort some of those questions out. Basically, New York State is probably one of the most difficult states to get a museum registered. And there are rules of what you can do and you cannot do. The part of your holding in order to raise money for operations, bricks, mortar, and salaries. So if the coal painting had been transferred at the same time as everything else was transferred to the new museum, there would be no question it could not be sold. As I mentioned, the Emerson Foundation sought permission from the courts to hold that back. And so the legal questions are, should they have been allowed to do that? What was the intent of William Seward III when he left everything to the foundation? Was it to be in pieces, or is it one piece intact? Those are some of the questions that have to be asked.
Well, was there any advocate for the community present when that request was made to the court originally?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's what bothers everybody. It seems to have been done in secret. If it was something that was legal and that they were not ashamed of it, why wouldn't they come out and let people know before it was done? I mean, it was a very shady thing to do, and it's left a very bad feeling among the community.
I can't answer the question.
No, that's not a question. It's just that it was wrong. That's all there is to it. What's the purpose of this first court date on the 7th of May?
In order to have somebody challenge the sale, there has to be someone to represent William Henry Seward III. And the court date is to find out whether I can be appointed to that administrative post or not.
Okay.
If you're not the appointee, who would be?
I don't know. There are only 3 people who are present are qualified. One is my cousin, the other is my sister. They have both waived their rights to that and said they wanted me to represent them. Other questions?
Who did the
Yes.
estimate on the picture?
What's the estimate on the picture?
Who did it?
Various people have provided estimates, and I don't remember all of them.
So it wasn't just one.
No. They come from different sources.
Maybe the question can't be answered, but what was the purpose of spiriting away that painting in the middle of mid-morning when a phone call was made to the Auburn Police Department to provide for security, and a phone call from someone, why couldn't it stay in the Seward House until a decision was made? And the thing is, if any of you have seen the AAA magazine, guess what? They got the wonderful Portage Falls painting there. Should we put false, fake misrepresentation here? Because it doesn't represent Auburn anymore. I'm concerned for our young people. Students, many of their grandparents, aunts and uncles. What are we going to tell the legacy to our children? I remember when Willard Chapel was going to be sold. It's one of the first people that sang in there with the pigeons flying all over the place. And look at that treasure piece that we have now. This is a chance to keep our community together and preserve our heritage for our children.
Thank you. Anybody else? Feel free, yes.
Hi, Ray, would you actually know, like, who was responsible for, to come up with the idea to sell the painting? Was it the curator of the museum or the Emerson Foundation?
I believe it was the Emerson Foundation.
Excuse me, but it sounds
They would
like,
be better able to answer that question.
it sounds like that the Emerson Foundation is also looking for some extra cash due to the fact that they will be getting half of that, half of the $20 million. So their interest is not for the museum, it's for themselves too.
They have not disclosed what the split would be.
Okay.
I think in all fairness, we do need to say that these transactions happened before the current administration, Ms. Chabot and these people. This happened before she came on board. I don't believe she came on board until 2008.
A couple of questions that were asked before we got to the meeting. One of them was that do the messengers want the painting? No, we do not want the paintings. We want it back in the Seward House. The other question was, are you going to make money on this? No, we're probably going to spend, we and our supporters will probably spend $25,000 to make this happen.
I think there was a question back here.
I don't have a question. I just want to tell Ray or reaffirm what he already knows, that as a member of Ray's 1956 when his high school graduation, his whole place seems to be behind him. His emails are flying left and right in support of what he has. So good luck.
Thank you.
Are you telling us that this started in 2008 and is just coming out now?
I would characterize it as, you could say it started then. Exactly how it developed and unfolded, I don't think I can answer that accurately.
Yes, there's a question back here.
Ray, I think you mentioned earlier that when the courts decided that the foundation could retain the painting, that it was also stated that they could not dispose of the painting without actions of the same court. So has the foundation sought relief from the courts to actually dispose of the painting? And what was the disposition of the court if that action was sought?
As far as I know, that action is not taking place.
Yes.
Have you received any support other than Senator DeFrancisco from any of our elected officials or other prominent figures or other museums?
From lots of museums, we've received support. The senator who seemed most interested is Senator Engelbert, who is apparently appreciative of the arts, preserving them in New York State.
Have you received any help locally? Legislative council, city council, Cuba County, have they gone on record, pro or con?
Not that come to mind any official bodies.
Yes, sir.
I keep on going back as to if the courts initially said in order to sell the painting, you would have to get approval from the court. How were they then able to remove the painting from the Seward House?
That's a good question, and I can't answer it. That's a legal question.
Okay, it was an illegal act that they did though, right? That's something that seems.
That's again a legal issue.
The gentleman in the yellow jacket, yes.
Yes, to answer Mr. Bush's question, my name's Terry Leto. I'm the Wasco Town Board. I tried to put a resolution to say that the town doesn't want to see the Florida Seward Museum and the Anderson Foundation not to sell the museum that got shot down.
Well, thank you for trying. That's what we need. I think just chipping away at this a little bit at a time, we're gonna get there. We feel pretty confident. Sure.
One of the questions about whether or not other museums have supported us, if you have access to the internet, you just look up Seward painting, gold painting, you will find all sorts of comments. And actually, it was in the International Tribune, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and a recent article, the Wall Street Journal had an article about this meeting tonight, by the way. And there was recently a meeting in Syracuse of New York State historians, and someone I know whose friend was at that meeting as a historian, she said that's all they talked about. We've had some support, informally, not officially, but from the Everson. So, yes, there is support out there, and you can look it up on the internet and see who's supporting this.
I'm sorry, there's a question. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Is there any precedent for this type of situation with other museums, that case law perhaps that could give some encouragement to how this could turn out in a way that's beneficial? Are there other cases where
You know, I really can't speak to that, but I can tell you that I worked at the Museum of Modern Art for 18 years. And they had, they've been around a long time and have quite a collection. And some of the things are not in fashion anymore, but because of New York state laws, it is very difficult to deaccession a work of art. The only way I know that they ever did it was to purchase another work of art. And in the case of the Seward House, that doesn't make any sense. This is the work of art that represents him as governor. So, I don't know. I don't know if there were other precedents, but I know that if you're chartered in this state, it's a very difficult thing to do. And we're grateful. You don't want to sell off the best part of you just to support a building. That makes no sense. Other questions? Comments? Yes, ma'am.
Do we know who authorized the Auburn City Police to actually come and spend taxpayer money? Regardless of whether it was right or wrong, but to go and use the San Francisco hours with us off the policeman?
I don't. Do you,
And I know these are legal questions also that the lawyer would have to answer. But
Yeah.
maybe that's just who had the right to say, people of the city, those are our policemen, we pay for them, or authorized to take that payment.
That's a very good question. Are you a lawyer? Well, all right. Let me hear from this gentleman right over here. Yes, sir.
Thank you. It's obvious you have very strong support this evening from a wide variety of the community. What you don't seem, I think, to have yet organized, and I tend to be kind of an organizational person.
I'm sorry, we don't have yet an organizational person?
An organizational group, for example, who would, I think, put at task city council, put at task our local legislators. Certainly if we can get a senator from outside the area to kind of look into this and help out a bit, I would think that any of our congressmen or local legislature and a variety of other communities in the area. Now, the way I would suspect that would be done is the good folks here tonight might want to volunteer some of their time and services to approach city council and ask them, because I think it's relevant that you find out who's for this and who isn't. Everybody that wants to hide under their desk or something and say, well, no, we can't make a statement, well, they need to get in with what's going on in this city and not just kind of ignoring the inevitable, and that is that there are a lot of concerned people here tonight who are willing to make their time and effort. These people, I think, are representatives of their community, county, and state. And so I think individually, if this group here tonight organized the chairman to maybe look into folks at city council, maybe someone else to look at the people at the county legislature, to approach Senator Mazzolio and others, Gary Finch, and put them on the spot. I mean, basically, this is a crisis. I mean, if this painting is lost, it's lost. And when they say we're gonna put a fine reproduction is a fake, basically. And no one goes to a museum to see a fake. And so if that is their solution to the problem, we'll keep the painting but give you the fake. Then I think we need to go back and again confront people who beyond ourselves can in fact do something, because that's why we elect them to office. And if they don't, I think, listen to what the constituents have to say, then maybe we need to put a little bit more power in what we do and get these people to listen.
I love your ideas. Well, it's these ideas we're counting on. We're counting on all of you, because this is important to every one of us. This is our history. Before I came to this city, I had never been in this museum. I knew so little about Seward. Who knew he was to be assassinated along with Lincoln? Who knew all of the wonderful things he did for our state, for our country, that he ran for president? I mean, this is a remarkable man, and he's ours. He's an Auburnian. Oh my gosh, that's pretty incredible. And to have all of this stuff here, you guys have a treasure trove. This is really amazing. I think there was one question back here, and then I'll get to you.
Just to comment on what he said, I ran into two city councilors who told me that they could be here. Neither one showed up.
Thank you.
I tried.
Well, that's great. And believe me, Oh, sorry, Sue.
Can't hear the question.
Okay, be sure and speak up when you speak up. Everybody wants to hear him. I'll come down there with the mic if you'd rather. The gentleman here said he ran into 2 city council members this week, and he pleaded with them to do something about it, to no avail. Oh, to come to the meeting. Well, you know, we're gonna keep plugging away at them. We'll do a letter writing campaign. I plan to get every one of you involved in this, if you're willing. Let's go for it. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and how effective would it be, for how many years people in Auburn and all over New York State haven't joined the Seward House? What about petitions? I'm sure we could get many, many names on petitions and present them to whoever.
You know, this lady is asking about petitions. She thinks that petitions would be a good way to do this. I agree with you. There is actually a way we can do this online and get people involved from around the country. It's called change.org, and boy, if somebody is willing to help me figure this out, I'll do it. All right. See, we're getting so many great ideas. I just love it. Yes, sir.
What court is this appeal being made in?
This is the surrogates court, I believe. Right. Yes, it's the surrogates court. In the old post office building, again, May 7th, 10 a.m. Go there, sit respectfully, and show your support.
Well, who would be the judge, or who are the choices of people that we might get there?
You know, do you know who the judge is? I'm sorry. Judge Leon? I'm new to this city. Anybody else? Any comments? I'll repeat the questions.
You got the judge's phone number?
No, we have to play by the rules here. Yes, ma'am.
Was it aware what that painting was worth while it was there 170 some odd years? And now that they know what it's worth, are Albernians afraid that it's going to be, if it goes back into the Seward House, worried that it's going to be maybe stolen or something? I'm just curious, because all eyes are on that.
No, you know,
Okay, I just, you know.
Well,
issues.
my understanding is, having been a docent there is a house security system, there was a motion sensor on the painting itself, and it's stanchioned off. You really can't get very close to that painting. I'm telling you, we did a Matisse show at MoMA with over 400 works. The only security there was in there was a piece of tape on the floor that told you how far you could get. There was no electronics. We used to call it the line drawn in the sand. You know, I think to be chartered by the state as a museum, you'd have to have some kind of security system. And you can't imagine that an insurance company would allow it to be there with improper security. Why would they take that risk? If I were investing in an insurance company, I wouldn't want them to take that risk, I'll tell you that.
But it was just taken out so easily. I'm just.
Well, I don't think it was that easy.
Oh, right.
It's a huge painting. It took them. Karen
Yeah,
can speak to
I
this.
don't think it was that
Well, not
easy.
easy.
The police were there at 6 a.m. that morning. I
Okay.
walked by at 20 to 9, and doors burst open and they were carrying it out. It took them a while. Now, it was anchored firmly into the wall, but it was also, they also had to build a crate to take it out too. But it took them a while. Now, our police those white, by the way, there's a separate security system on that painting now since 2008. So there's double security on it as it is. And they're all wired into the police and fire station, so if they can't get down the street half a block before that painting's gone, something's wrong here in Auburn. But no, it's been there, and as Sharon said, I mean, the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, I mean, you're going to see all those impressionists. I mean, they can't keep them there because they can't protect them. I know, I read something. They thought somebody was going to fall into the painting. No tourist gets near that painting. Even the guides can't get near it because of that separate security system. We got within 2 or 3 feet, and this horrid alarm goes off. So yes, museums take that. That's a risk they have. They all. I mean, the museum you go to has wonderful things in it. Yes, It's been known to be valuable, and of course, the value of paintings, depending on the artist, rises and falls over the years, you know, that watching the Antiques Roadshow and stuff like that. So yes, it's always been valuable, yeah, not suddenly in 2008.
Yes? Yeah.
I was just wondering what communication has gone on between Seward House and the Emerson Foundation since that occurred. Has there been any interaction, any?
You know, I can't speak to that. I really don't know. The question is, has there been any communication, any interaction between the Emerson Foundation and the Seward Museum?
Yeah, yes. When it separated from the Foundation Historical Association and the house then became a New York State chartered museum, it also had a separate board of directors. So the museum's board of directors was fully aware of this whole scenario that Ray outlined for you since 2008. So yes, they're in communication.
I have a question regarding, and I keep on going over in my mind everything that's being said here. And one of the questions that I keep coming up with is, are they looking at cost effectiveness when it comes down to the security for the painting and the insurance for the painting?
The question is, are they looking for cost effectiveness when it comes to insurance for the painting and security of the painting? I can't presume to know what they're thinking, but I can tell you that I know there are several places where you can apply for grants for additional security, if that is a question. I really can't speak further than that. I don't know. I know, well, that's all I can actually say about it.
So we have no idea what it costs to insure this painting, to keep it in the Seward House, and what it costs to maintain the security on it on an annual basis.
I really don't know.
Question could probably be answered in a number of ways. Cost effectiveness, I suspect you could measure what's the draw to Auburn and the value to the merchants, the people who come to the house. How much do they spend in the community? I don't have an answer for that. I do know that if you presume 10,000 visitors a year, 1/4 of them will spend $125 an Auburn. You've more than paid for some of the house's costs. But that's all very subjective.
We're just trying to get an idea of this.
Sure. I think there was another question. Yes, sir?
I think it's been said that there were communications between the Emerson Foundation and the Seward House Museum. Did the board of directors, if that's what it is, for the Seward House Museum concur with the action of the board of directors of the Emerson Foundation to?
Did they concur? Is that what you asked?
Yes.
The question has been asked. He assumes that there has been communication between the Emerson Foundation and the Seward Board, the Seward House Museum Board, and he wanted to know if there was objection from the members of the Seward Board.
I wanted to know if the Seward House Board concurred.
Concurred.
To the action of the Emerson Foundation.
Is that true?
The quote from the president of the Emerson Foundation was, they were in lockstep together.
Is there a quote from the Seward House Board?
Not that I'm